Okay, so there's different types of factoring. There's a million different ways you guys have learned. You've learned magic X. Some of you have learned magic T. Some of you have learned the backwards box. There isn't one right or wrong way to do it, but I'm going to teach it a little bit differently, because if you're good at this, do it. If you're good at this, do it. And then if you want another way, let me help you with that. So one thing I want you to notice is that all of these, it's done by columns. So all of these are exactly the same. All of these are exactly the same. All of these are exactly the same type, and all of these are exactly the same type. Okay, so I want us to focus on the differences between them. So what I want you to see is, let's look at the difference between this one and this one. So if you look at this type, there are 3 groups, 1, 2, 3. So there's 3 groups. Let me make that a little bit. And it goes x squared, x, and then a number, and there's nothing in front. Where this one is 3 groups, it goes x squared, x, and then a number. But the difference is this time it has a number in front. So number in front, number in front. This one, there's only 2 of them. There's a minus in the middle, and you can square root them. So keep in mind, it's 2, there's minus, and you can square root both. GCF means they have something the same. The first thing I would look at is I would look for an x. Like if you look here, they both have an x. This has an x, but this doesn't. This has an x, this has an x, but this doesn't have an x. That's why it's not something the same, okay? But you always want to be careful, because if you look down here, if you look, this has an x, but this doesn't, but there's 2 of them, there's a minus, I can't square root both of them. I can't even square root either of them. And this one is, there's 3 of them, so this has to be GCF. This is honestly the one I look for first. Always look to see if it's GCF first, and we'll get to that, okay? So what I do is, if there isn't a number in front, what I'm doing is I'm focusing on that 10. And I'm thinking of all the ways to get 10. And by that I mean multiply. 10 times 1 and 2 times 5. Now my goal is to get the center. But I have to add to get the center. Boom, those are my numbers. X plus 2, x plus 5. Let's go to the next one. It's got x squared, x, and then a number. I know it's a b, but it's the same idea. There's 3 of them, and there's no number in front. So what do? I focus on that last number. Don't even look at the negative. Just focus on listing all the ways to get 48. 1, 48. 2, 24. Some of you already see it. That's great. 3, 16. But I want you to be aware that sometimes there could be difficult ones. Now that I'm doing that, now I'm looking here. And as soon as I see a minus, I know I'm going to be subtracting them instead of adding them. So here, it was all positive, so I just added everything. But whenever I see a negative, that means I'm going to be subtracting them. So I want to get 2. This gives me the 2. So if this is negative, the bigger guy is negative. Let me give you an example of a different one. So if I had b squared plus 2b minus 48, it would still be 6 and 8. But, oops, I'm sorry, you can't see that. It would still be 6 and 8. But since this is positive, the bigger guy is positive. Boom, that's negative. So the bigger guy is always going to win. All right, so now I'm going to go b plus 6, b minus 8. And by the way, you could have written it as b minus 8 and b plus 6. It doesn't matter, but the 8 needs to be negative and the 6 needs to be positive. And boom, there's your answer. Let's go to the next one. Look at that. 2 ways to multiply to get 28. 1, 28. Don't even look at the negative. 2, 14. 4, 7. My goal is to get a 3. Boom, that gives me the 3. Because there's a negative, I'm going to be subtracting them. So since this guy's positive, the bigger guy's positive, boom, that's negative. R plus 7, R minus 4. I want to acknowledge a couple more that aren't on here. So I want you to be aware. If I had b squared minus 6b plus 9, I look at the last guy. And I see all the ways to get 9. 1, 9, and 3, 3. So my magic is to get the 6. Since this is positive and this is negative, I'm going to add them. All right? So the way I remember it is, let's say I had this. If this is negative, I subtract. If this is positive, I add, and the bigger guy always gets it, okay? So I add them, and I'm going to try to get 6. This gives me 6. The way that works is they're both negative. B minus 3, B minus 3. But I'm not okay with you writing it like that. I need you to write it B minus 3 squared. So make sure you write the answer like that, or I will not accept it. Okay, so this one is the... So honestly, I think the easiest way to do this one, I could do the little magic X and magic T. So if I did the magic X and magic T, let me show you, because this is what some of you like. If I was to do this problem, some of you would do the magic X 10, 7, 5, 2. Then you're like, oh, those are my numbers. So if you were then doing this problem and you were doing the magic X, this time you would go 3 times 2 is 6, 7, my numbers are 6 and 1. And then you guys do the magic T, or I think you do 3x, 3x, 6, 1, x 2, x plus 2, 3x plus 1. So that is something that works if you want to do the magic X, magic T. But if you like magic X, magic T, then you're doing it. But I want to show you a different way. This is what I like to do. This is how I do all the problems. I do guess and check. It might seem kind of off right now, but this is what works for me. So the ways to get 3x squared are 3x and x. And then I focus on the last guy and I think, okay, what are all the ways to get 2? So the ways to get 2 are 2 and 1. I'm going to put a 1 here and a 2 here. But what I want you to see is that I could have put the 2 here and the 1 here. So I have 2 options, and since it's all positive, that's going to be positive. Now what I do is I try to figure out what works for the center. So I do the inner, that's 2x. And I do the outer, which is 3x. The problem is 2x and 3x give me 5x, and that's 7x, so this is out. This is 1 times x, which is 1x. 3 times 2, which is 6x. And 6x plus 1x gives me 7x. So my answer is 3x plus 1, x plus 2. Now again, if you like your way, do it your way. Guess and check works for me because I've done it for so long. So it just makes sense to me. But if it's difficult for you, then don't do it that way. Do whatever way works for you. Okay? Just trying to show this way. So let me cross that part off because I don't like it. You're looking at this top. Let's do the next one, the guess and check way. So I look at 6x squared. When I look at 6x squared, I have 6x and x. And then I think of all the ways to get 10. All the ways to get 10 are 1 and 10. And 2 and 5. So I'm going to go 1, 10, and then 6x and x, and I'll try 2 and 5. I'm actually going to use pencil because I feel like if I'm guessing checking, it might just be easier to do that. So 1x and 60x isn't going to give me 11, so it's out. So now I'm going to switch, and I'm going to put the 10 here, and I'm going to put the 1 here. I get pretty good, so I get better at figuring out which one makes more sense. 10x and 6x isn't going to give me 11x, so it's out. 5 and 2, 5x and 12x, no. So I switch it. 2x and 30x, no. Shoot, none of them worked. None of them worked because what you could also do is try 3x and 2x. And now you got to play the 1-10 game. And you get, again, you get better at it. I know some of you think, oof. But I can see automatically 2 and 30. Nope, that's not going to give me 11. So 10, I switch the spots and 1. 20 and 3. Nope, that's not going to give me 11. So now I try 3 and 2. 6 and 6 is not going to give me 11. So I go 2 and 3. Okay? And I get, ooh, I think that's because this one doesn't work. Shoot. Something happened here. I made up a problem that didn't work. So hold on, let me pause it really quick. So I realized what my issue was. I did 2 times 3 instead of 2 times 5. I knew something was off. So now I go 4x and 15x. 15 minus 4 gives me 11. This one's negative and that one's positive. Let me show you. 4x minus 15x gives me negative 11. And again, if you want to do your magic X and magic T, I think that's great. I'm just offering a different way if that way doesn't seem right to you. Okay, so I did the guess and check way. Okay, so let's do it again. I feel like my options are 25x and x, but I'm not going to get that from a 10. So what feels right to me is 5x and 5x, 1, 1. 5x and 5x gives me 10x. They're both going to be negative. It's the same thing. So 5x minus 1 squared. Okay? So I feel like that one went a little bit quicker. Again, if you want to do your magic x, you would do this. 25, negative 10, negative 5 and negative 5, two numbers that multiply to get 25, add to 10. And then you would go your magic t, 25x, 25x, negative 5, negative 5. Then you would divide by 5. And then you get 5x minus 1, 5x minus 1, which is the same thing I got. I don't care. All right, let's go to the next one. Okay, there aren't three of them, so it's not any of these things. So I look, there's a minus in the middle, and I can square root both. So I'm going to square root both of them. What's the square root of x squared? X. What's the square root of 9? 3. I literally write the exact same thing twice, but one gets a plus, one gets a minus. Okay? This only works when there are two of them. There's a minus in the middle, and you can square root both. So look over here. There's two of them. There's a minus in the middle, but you can't take the square root of 3, and you can't take the square root of x. So that is not difference of squares. Let's go to the next one. There's a minus in the middle. There's two of them, and you can square root both. The square root of 4x squared is 2x. The square root of 81 is 9. So write it again. One gets a plus, one gets a minus. I'm done. Okay, you want to be careful on this next one. There's two of them. There's a minus in the middle. You can square root both. But here's where the issue is, so be careful. Since 121 comes first, 11 comes first. Since x comes second, it comes second. And by the way, you don't always have to go plus minus. You can do minus plus. It doesn't matter. Okay? The next one is GCF. GCF is where they have something the same. This is honestly the most difficult for people. If you see it, then you just see it and good for you. But if you don't see it, then I want to show you how you can do it in a different way. Okay? So see how there's 1, 2 groups? What I'm going to do is I'm going to break up the group. So 3 means 3 times 1, x. Negative 9, I want to find something the same. So I wouldn't go 9 times 1, because yeah, 1's the same, but 1 doesn't really count. So you want to find the biggest. That's the same. And what's bigger is going 3 times 3, but it's negative x. Now what you do is you're going to circle what's the same. So they both have an x, and they both have a 3. And I'm going to call it, I hoosh it out. So I'm going to hoosh out a 3x. And then what am I left with? 1x. I don't need to put the 1. So I go x, and then minus 3. So my answer is 3x, x minus 3. Okay? Let's try the next one. All right. Look, they all 3 have an x. But this time, instead of there being 2 groups, there are 1, 2, 3 groups. So I'm going to make 3 little boxes. And I'm going to do this. 2 is the same thing as 2 times 1, and there are 3 x's. I see a 2, so I want to match the 2. Negative 2 times 4, xx. Don't forget the negative. And negative 2 times 5x. They all have a 2. Notice I'm going to circle the 2, but not the negative. And they all have an x. Whoosh it over. I'm not going to put the 1. I'm left with x squared minus 4x minus 5. So I get 2x, x squared minus 4x minus 5. But there's actually a problem, because now that you're in Algebra 2, you have to be careful. And if you look right here, this answer reminds me of this type of factoring, where there's x squared, x, and then a number. So if you look here, I can actually keep going. So I think of all the ways to get 5, and that's 5 and 1. Since this guy's negative, the bigger guy's negative. and then make sure you bring down that 2x. So just because you finish doesn't